right. I think we're live. And we're back. Thank you for joining us for our second Women Leading Partnerships event. Whether you're showing up here as a woman leader, sniffing out insight to best support your team, a woman who is running partnerships every day to best understand how to navigate the partner ecosystem, an ally hoping to understand how to best support the women within your own ecosystems and beyond, we are thrilled you're here to engage in some meaningful conversations about the invisible work women do in partnerships, tech, and workplaces every day. According to Women Tech Network, survey results have revealed that 65% of tech recruiters believe bias is an ongoing problem in technical recruitment. Research also shows women are 1.6 more likely to get laid off than men. The tech layoffs in 2022 have been devastating, with the research by Women Tech Network showing that 69.2% of those laid off were in fact women. About 64% of respondents have been spoken over during meetings, 19% have felt pigeonholed by stereotypes in various situations, and 11% have been asked to, ready for it, supply the food during meetings. A whole different report by Navisite says 94% of women believe they're being held to a higher standard than their male counterparts in the workplace. 75% of them also say they or their female colleagues are consistently asked to take on administrative tasks compared to the men at work. Think note-taking. So to recap, women are more likely to be impacted by layoffs, deal with the bias during recruitment, and have to too often complete tasks in the workplace not reflected in their performance reviews or KPIs. These numbers are not meant to doom and gloom, rather level set and provide this real reality that women are facing. This is our opportunity to make a change and drive revenue in ways that actually feel good for everyone. We do have some incredible women here today, though, to help us cope. We're talking about the invisible work women are doing, and these inspiring leaders here will be providing actionable insights and advice to best support women in the workplace. So let's meet Elisa Reggiardo. Elisa is a B2B SaaS marketing leader specializing in partnerships, partner marketing, brand communication, and team building. Currently driving marketing at Slite from Lisbon, Portugal, leveraging strategic alliances for business growth over 5 years in the industry. So welcome, Elisa. We also here have Jess Grossman. Welcome, Elisa. We also have Jess Grossman. After earning her master's degree from New York University and working in the startup space, she founded InSocial in 2015. InSocial employs more than 20 people with diverse backgrounds and skill sets that all contribute to providing the InSocial methodology of the full circle approach to digital marketing to their clients. Through organic and paid social, PPC ads, email marketing and automation, website design, development, branding, influencer marketing, online customer service, and e-commerce fulfillment. Welcome, Jess. Finally, we also have Adrienne Coburn. She has built partner programs of all shapes and stages and sizes over her career, doing so at Uberflip, Shopify, and currently at Oyster HR. Her expertise is building scalable partner programs and go-to-market approaches that best support efficient growth within technology companies. She's passionate about harnessing the power of the ecosystem. So welcome to all the women here today and all the folks that are here today to make some change, to make some positive change. And just some housekeeping for everyone here. There's a chat to the right. There's also a Q&A feature. Speakers have our behind the scenes ability to communicate. This event will be recorded and shared with all the registrants. And before we get right into this, I just want to apologize. I do have a bit of an allergy or cold, so I don't usually sound like this. But bear with me, folks. And if you folks are ready, let's dive right in. So let's talk about the art of communication and the endless tasks associated with it. Communication can be used as such an umbrella term, referring to everything from how we talk to people to what we're actually saying, while also referencing all the nuances in between. Of course, any good communicator knows that communication isn't just touch points and chats, but it speaks to effective messaging, understanding, interpretation, and getting points across while getting things done. How do you navigate communication in the workplace, and what do people too often overlook? And I'm going to look at Elisa to kick this one off.
I love that we're opening with such a big topic, just to, get into the flow. Especially because I think that most of the time spent nowadays, at least in my role, is communicating with stakeholders, with colleagues, with partners, with everything and anything. And it's true that there isn't a KPI to measure it, point number one, right? So even the time you spend is often overseen, or how you measure the quality of the communication, right? And also communicating from the role or the place of a woman within this ecosystem can also be interpreted in many ways, depending who is across of the room, right? Sometimes it's the typical, if you're too assertive, then you're aggressive. If you don't speak up, then you're not heard. And I've noticed that, and I found myself trying to, find tricks or hacks to navigate these situations, mostly by shaping up my skills on reading who's across of the room in a couple of seconds to understand how can I shape the way I'm going to communicate with this person to really manage to come across as the person needs it, so it turns into efficient communication. I also think that it's mostly about finding balance. It's and adapting to that person across the set of the room, because we can't just assume that, oh, because at least it's how I see it. Oh, because I'm a woman, I need to always be assertive. Maybe the person across of the room is, like, highly sensitive, and they need a different type of communication from my end. So to me, the one thing that has worked, it's really adapting and reading what the person needs me and which type of communication they need, so I can actually get that ultimate result, which is buy-in, right? Like, it's about getting that buy-in through communication. And I'm still curious, though, how one day we're going to manage to come up with some sort of KPIs around that. So I'd love to see that.
I mean, I feel like it's hopeful in our future, especially with more and more ways of tracking all the things ever. But we'll look over at you, Jess. As a CEO and business owner, your approach may be a little bit different, and there may be nuances on your end. Any insights you'd like to share from the agency side when it comes to communication in the workplace for women in partnerships?
Yeah, I mean, I see it from the other side of partnerships, where I'm getting pitched at all the time of, like, use our SaaS, it's going to level up your business, all this kind of stuff. And I found that more often than not, it's almost like people come unprepared to speak to me. Like, yes, I'm the decision maker. Yes, I'm the one on the team that handles partnerships. But then they come and they ask for a call. And then I'm like, okay, tell me about how your software works. And I ask all these questions and they're like, I need to ask this person, or I need to ask that person. And it's like, you asked me to put this call on my calendar to convince me that I should use your software, and you want us to be your agency partner, but you're not even prepared to have this conversation, right? So I find that a lot of times, and not to call out men, but a lot of the times men are the one that are reaching out to me to start a partnership with my agency. And then I'm asking all the questions I need to know to feel confident that your software is going to help my business or help the business of my clients. And you can't even answer some of the questions that should be basic things, like maybe you're not, as technically aware as, your product manager, but if you're coming trying to sell me, I need to know these things, and you should be coming prepared to answer those questions, right? Or at least even bring someone else on the team who can be in that call. You're using my time, you might as well make the most of it, right? So I find that I've had one too many conversations where it's definitely been a waste of time, and it's, we didn't move ahead with the partnership like that. And I just want to plug the blog that I wrote on starting a great partnership relationship with an agency on the PartnerStack blog, where I kind of rant a little on this topic, but there's hopefully a lot of good information there, similarly to what I'm saying now.
Oh, I love that you provided a resource to reinforce what you're saying here. And yes, it's live, folks. I'm going to back up that plug. We're going to move on to the next question here. Thank you both. That was very helpful. When we're talking and we're thinking about that admin piece we kind of referenced a little bit earlier, let's talk about how to navigate delegation. And, women have this tendency to kind of take on everything themselves to make sure it gets done. And a lot of emotional and like kind of quiet labor that happens in the background of all that. This also ties into project management and ultimately how to say no and save time and resources when it does make sense. I'm curious, Adrienne, how you navigate all of this.
Yeah, the saying no piece is a tough one. And I think that we all feel that all the time. But I often see it happening the most when we're trying to prove ourselves, which once again is pretty well all the time. This kind of mentality of we have to have our hands in everything. I need to own it. I have to have control over it. A lot of it comes from this like innate need to like feel busy, to feel important, to feel involved. And I think that's something we really put on ourselves. It's not necessarily that's something expected of us. And honestly, it's almost the detractor. It's like people care about the bottom line. They care about if you're performing, if you're driving to your KPIs. They do not know or care that you have taken on 1 million tasks that ultimately could be done by somebody else or not done at all. So my advice here is like, be super careful about what you are doing and what impacts it's going to make. And if it doesn't fall into your KPIs, and if it's not something that you can prove the impact of, consider delegating it, consider taking it off altogether, and really being able to focus on those measurable impacts that at the end of the day do prove success and are the only things that people actually care about. I think the other thing this brings on to me is like this like personal mantra that I have with myself to care 10% less and try 10% less hard. We've been told our whole lives to like give 110, like come on, like put it out there. And it's like, who told us that that's a good way to approach life? Like that's not sustainable. That is not doable, especially as you go into this like whole area of raising a family. Like the motherhood penalty is real enough as it is. So like, please don't try to overcome that by taking on more to like prove yourself. Just focus on that bottom line and try to save impacts that way. Yeah, it's a hard one to do, and it's like a big learning, but it's a game changer once you can figure it out.
I mean, it's a tricky one too, and it's because of the way women have come to show up in the workplace, right? 10 times stronger, super prepared, ready for those calls, having the folks in the room ready to do the thing and make magic happen. So, but I think that's amazing advice. I love that. A 10% less is still probably, ready for it, like 40% higher than
Absolutely.
some of the stuff that folks might be used to getting. And I think that's a good point because, we want to avoid burnout. Because when you do take on all these additional tasks and the emotional labor and the communications for everything and the admin for everything, you do need to kind of scale it back in order to set your future self up for success and continue those revenue driving goals and setting yourselves up for success. I'm looking over to you, Jess, for insights on the agency side. Curious to know, how do you support women leaders in your company, and how can women leaders better advocate for themselves?
Mm-hmm. So it's a lot different on my end because we're not driving KPIs from a partnership perspective. We're driving KPIs for our client success. So I think the biggest thing that we do internally, and my team is primarily women, and not on purpose. It's just those are the resumes I get, and they're great. But a lot of the time, I have to remind my team members, especially my managers, to like find someone else who can do this. Like, think about what your time is worth. What could you be doing that another team member couldn't do? If there's something that they could, pass that off, double check it, of course, right? Don't just assume that it's done perfectly, but there are certain things that you have been given the responsibility to do. Own those things and find the team members that you think can support you on these other elements. And if you feel that you don't have a team member to support you on those other elements, how can I support you to support them to be able to do that, right? I think it is really just a female response where it's like, I have to do everything. And all of my female team members are like this. And I have to keep reminding them not to take on everything, because then some things don't get done. And, that's not what we want to see. Just as a side note too, I will never stop saying this, but the number of female team members that when I ask them to do something and they're like, oh, I didn't get to this yet, I'm sorry. I'm like, don't apologize. Like, what are you apologizing for? It's not the end of the world. Like, it shouldn't be your default response. And then it's always I'm sorry for apologizing. It's like, stop doing it, right? But we as women have been trained to just always be sorry for the things that we haven't even done. It's just our default response. So that's one of the things that I try and ingrate in my team as well. And I would just, I know this is a women in partnerships discussion, but I do also have a manager on my team who is gender fluid, and they are one of the main sources of taking everything on themselves. And they're like the first person I go to. I'm like, how can I help you? How can this team member help you? what can we take off your plate? So I think just including, more people that don't identify as men, it is a broader, I want to say, problem, because, you have a team to support you and you should really be leaning into them.
I love that you brought that up, Jess, because I think that the truth is it's marginalized and underrepresented folks that tend to take on more to prove the value, right? When you're not of a default identity, you tend to want to overperform to kind of close any kind of even culture gap, which can be a really tricky thing to navigate. I learned this term recently, a servant leader, which is it's an interesting leadership style, but it really speaks to a leader who advocates for their team and cares about the people within it and is there to serve the people. And Jess, I'm happy to mention that you come off as a servant leader. So I love to see it. I love to see an example of something I just currently was flirting with in my head in terms of theory. We're going to move on to the recognition piece. And just so it's clear, women do take on, and marginalized groups, I love that you brought that up, a lot of additional work and tend to take on the work absolutely necessary to be done. But the work isn't always captured by KPIs or on paper. While the real ask here is for organization leaders and folks, with that power to find a way to have these efforts reflected in reports and conversations. I'm curious, though, in the meantime, before all that happens and tracking towards there, what are some tips you partner leaders may have when it comes to getting the work you're doing acknowledged? I'm going to start with you, Elisa.
I guess self-advocate for you. It might also depend on the size of the team. I've been working in startups for longer than I care to confess, but it's easier in a smaller environment rather than like a larger corporation to showcase what you do and step up. So I understand that. I still think that the easiest way to drive that recognition that might not always start from the other end, and yet it's still needed. It's something we'll need to take on. It's kind of like one more of those tasks that we're talking about that are not seen and that you need to kind of like plan and prepare and package in the right way. But it will set, like the ground for one. And I think someone in the chat was mentioning like lots of time organizations don't really understand what is it that we do in partnerships. And so by showcasing your little milestones, the bigger ones, the big goals you hit, you're also sharing with the rest of the organization what the heck is it that you do in partnerships, and just finding the channels and doing a combination of like nuggets of information here and there, and then like big creative stuff for you to share across the org. It just triggers that breach of communication for then everyone to either ask questions or celebrate and recognize whatever it is that you shared and you're proud about. So yeah, I guess that would be my takeaway on recognition.
Amazing. And I love the mention too, because in addition to kind of championing the work, you're educating like an organization on partnerships, and partnerships is newer, right? So folks, have an evolving definition of what this could be and what it is going to be. And so I love that. I'm looking over at Adrienne right now and curious to know, Adrienne, do you have any strategies or tactics to get work being done, noticed, and acknowledged?
For sure. And I think it goes back to what was just said about being your own advocate, making your own platform. I truly believe that, especially in partnerships, is not necessarily a given platform for us as compared to some other, sales, direct sales, for example. A lot of the time it's like A of the month, like that kind of approach, and reality, unless you're really pushing it, it's probably not going to happen in partnerships. So be your own advocate. The advice I give my team here is over communicate aggressively. Like, you think you're being annoying, you're not. If you're being annoying, you are just being heard. I used to be a ski instructor, and I used to give this, or I'll use it as an analogy, because when I was a ski instructor, I'd be watching people go down, and they get to the bottom, I'd say, okay, you need to bend your knees. And they say, I'm bending my knees. And then you say, you're not. And there's this whole back and forth argument. You're not, I am. And then you say, okay, pretend you are taking a poop. Sit on a toilet. Sit down in a chair, get your butt so aggressively low that you feel like a fool. And then they look like a regular skier. It's like, to them, they feel like outrageous. But when you see them do it, it looks normal. It looks like someone going down a mountain. And I think it has to be the same thing. Like, you might feel silly talking about this stuff so much, but unless you are, it is being lost in Slack messages. It is being lost in everyone's day-to-day. So over communicate as much as you can. And on top of that, more than that, is driving back to bottom line, like I said before. So go beyond trying to prove value and just actually drive value. Numbers are really hard to argue with. They're very easy to see. So if you can really draw back to that KPI, to something measurable, that is going to really be what drives and brings that communication to the forefront even more so.
And I just want to hop in, and I love the self-advocating piece, and I totally agree with that. But sometimes it may feel like there's not the best moment to do that, or some people may feel really shy about it, and it's just the type of personality they are. So at In Social, we actually have a team rewards program that's based on everyone else recognizing their team members. So the rules are that if someone helped you do something, or we have like a review process, if someone reviewed someone else's work and it's perfect, there's no mistakes, they get recognized, and then everyone gets these points passed around that can then, you know, be redeemed for like In Social sweatshirts and things like that. But it's putting the recognition on your fellow team members to make sure that you feel recognized and not always taking the onus on yourself, right? If a client says that they did a great job, or a partner says you helped us with this and saved us so much time, like the team knows to call out. We have a Slack channel, and like every day there's, you know, at least 5 or 6 messages from other team members calling out someone who helped them. So I think, you know, it comes from the top. It comes from leadership kind of instituting this sort of culture, and it's not always possible, but I'm the leader here, so I made that decision, and it seems to be working really well.
And hence why we love having a woman leader, Andy, around to kind of do this work. I also am just going to jump in here and speak to allyship too. I think finding the people to champion you in the workplace and the work that you're doing is also key. Had a conversation not too long ago with a friend, and she was talking about, she asked me this odd question. It was like, where do you draw your power? And then you pause and you really think about that. Where do you get your power, right? Is it coming from a leader? Is it coming from someone else in the organization? Is it coming from a male that supports you and champions you? It's important to recognize where that power is coming from so you can harness it to best set yourself up for work. And sometimes there are things better left for someone else to say about you, because you can't come in and be like, I'm talented, I'm winning, I got this, which is, you know, to a certain degree, you can, you know, speak to that and you master that art of articulating the work that you're doing. But there is nothing compared to a champion who will come and advocate for you, support you in your career and the work that you're doing. And I encourage everyone to kind of think about who their champions are. And I bet you there is someone behind the scenes that helps support you, that you're drawing some of your power from. Ooh, I'm going to move on to collaboration. We ready for it? Speaking of collaboration, how the workload shakes out sometimes in the workplace, and like who ends up getting their hands the dirtiest within partnerships can be some gray area. And I'm going to start with you, Jess, this time. And I'm curious to know your POV on this.
Okay, so some things I can't delegate. I will admit I like to do a lot of the things, but I find that as an agency, the partnerships that we build with the right partners are imperative to our success and the success of our clients. So I always want to be the one to lead. And as in that blog post, I have very set expectations for the partners that we choose. So I usually manage that. And I also manage the referrals and making sure that we're offering our clients a discount if the SaaS company can do it, right? Like I lead that kind of stuff. But that when it comes to implementation, depending on what the software does, I have team members that then take the lead, right? So if we're a partner with an EMS platform, well, my email lead is going to work with their onboarding specialist and kind of take it from there. So I make sure that I delegate the actual work that we do with our partners together to the right team members, but I'm still the one managing all the relationships and putting all the leads into the system, just because that's something that I want to make sure that we do properly, and I'm not ready to delegate that over yet. Not listening to my own advice, I guess.
I mean, it happens, right? Sometimes it's hard to let go too, which is part of collaboration. And kind of understand those tricky moments. And
I also like just having friends in the partner space that I can meet up at events and like talk to, so like I want those friendships. It's a little selfish.
And over on the partnership side, Adrienne, I'm curious to know what some of your experience is when it comes to like distributing workloads and assigning different tasks and expectations of collaboration amongst your team. I know that you run a team here, so curious to know if there's any big similarities or differences you've seen on your end.
Yeah, I'd say the biggest thing for us is not so much delegation, but in joint goals with other departments. And really being able to, if we're talking about collaboration, it not being like this siloed partnerships team in which it's like you have a partner marketer and they do all the marketing for your team, and you have an operations person and they do all the ops for your team. When you do that, you are cutting yourself off from the rest of the organization. So I've found the biggest game changer is joint goals with other teams where you are working towards the same objective. If you don't do that, especially these days when people are like, only do what's driving to the bottom line, everything else is deprioritized. People are really resource constrained and not just hiring people because they want to fill a gap, etc. If your goal and their goal don't align, they won't be collaborative. It's just for everything that we're saying today about saying no to things and deprioritizing stuff, other people are going to do that when you don't have joint goals. So by nature, it won't be a collaborative work environment. So by setting those joint goals with, say, co-marketing or marketing, where you're both being able to drive partnerships generated pipeline through co-marketing initiatives, you're both being able to nurture your partners through like a life cycle sequence, something to that effect. It will really, really, truly change collaboration from a top-down cascading level versus like the scrappy nature that happens a lot in partnerships where you're like begging for resources, where you're like, please do me a favor. That favor mentality can be avoided if you go into that joint goals approach.
I love that. Do you also have any tips for like, I love the idea of cross-functional magic. And I do think that it creates a world of a difference. Do you have any tips on how to make that happen internally too?
Cross-functional magic?
Yeah, like across teams,
wow.
I sorry, corporate, a little corporate, but like for fun.
It goes back to your champion thing from earlier. It's like knowing your champions and being able to have that conversation from a top-down cascading level is obviously something that's going to help this. Depends on how your company's structured. Ours is structured around OKRs. If there's not an OKR from top down that is saying that this is something we're working towards, it won't be worked on. Everyone's OKRs roll up into those OKRs, all the initiatives roll up into the OKRs, etc. So start there, find your sponsorships or your champions outside of your team who believe in this, who get this and can understand it. And then I think a big piece of cross-functional magic, I love this term now, is with your individual members of your team, really trying your hardest to bond and not burn bridges and always lead with empathy, always lead with the most positive intent impossible. Because if we all of a sudden assume that someone's like working against us or whatever, and there's like negative energy, there's everything, all that, even if there's joint goals, it gets burned to the ground. So.
I would just like to jump in on that as like a human, like just be nice to people because like you're gonna like see them other places. Like the number of partner managers that we've had at InSocial that have then gone to other software companies that I never heard of, and then they're like, well, I liked partnering with you there. I think this is a better solution for this problem. Like join me here, right? And I mean, again, as a human, just be nice to people, but also from partnerships, like I've created more partner relationships from people that have moved on to other companies. And it's actually been awesome for us as an agency just to experience what I wouldn't have known is out there just from those relationships.
Now, I got to say, I'm going to pull this info from earlier this year. I featured Elisa in one of our Women Leading Partnerships campaigns, and I had the privilege of kind of chatting with you. And I know for a fact that you've done a lot of work in both the marketing space and now I know that you're a little newer to partnerships, but you've been doing this for years. When it comes to tips for cross-functional magic, do you have any up your sleeve?
I was thinking of this while you guys were talking about, like leveraging the connections with other team members and finding champions. And sometimes that works. But because so many people call me aggressive, sometimes you just need to go as in, you know how support teams have SLAs to the customers, and you just commit to something. And so if that doesn't work, the first approach, you can always circle back to, well, if we have SLAs with our customers, why not having them cross teams, you know, as in, if I'm going to generate a lead for you, I'm going to need you to reach out to the lead within X time frame. Or for me to achieve this, you know, like you'll need to provide this. And so that has been the trait that works for me when the first approach that and Adrienne mentioned doesn't. But again, I'm very aggressive, so.
Aggressive. I mean, I was like, I didn't have microaggressions up on the list for themes to talk about today, but I just want to say I don't think you're aggressive at all, Lisa. I think that the problem that we run into a lot of the time as women in the workplace is just by being direct or standing up for a cause or a project we're in, we may be interpreted as being a little more aggressive because they don't expect it from us sometimes. And that is not on women leaders so much as, I mean, we can help kind of guide that learning, but that is more for the workforce and the work culture to better understand the context of the individual who is speaking with you and trying to get things done. You know, I think that's an important note, but you are not aggressive at all. You are direct, thoughtful, and inspiring. And wondering now, folks, when we think about getting time back, and we're all in tech here, how automation helps women in the workplace. Let's talk about it. Who wants to start? This one, I'm not even going to assign this one. Let's go wild.
Okay, I can start. And I swear I wasn't paid for this. But honestly, PartnerStack makes like partnership management so much easier as an agency. So I love it just because like I can put something in, like put in a lead, grab my link, resources are there. So that actually saves a ton of time. On the flip side, I do want to say, sometimes automation works against you. So you have to be careful not to lean too much into it. I get a lot of automated, again, like join our partnership programs, you know, automated emails, or it's like, I'll get an email after I already spoke to the partner manager and being like, we just talked about this. Like, I'm guessing this is a flow. And it's just really annoying. So I think like leaning into automation can be really great, but you also have to remember that you're speaking most of the time to people that you actually know or are building a relationship with. So it's a lot different than you would do automation with a customer base, right? Because you have a lot of customers, you're not having those one-on-one conversations. But with your, you know, agency partners, you're probably actually talking to them in Slack. So just make sure you're not leaning too heavily into automation and AI.
Aligned.
Okay.
Adrienne, did you have anything about automation for you and Oyster and your experience?
Yeah. I mean, this is not so much as to saving time, but rather automation/technology I have found that can really help bring some of these things that we've been talking about with like KPIs and tracking and measuring impacts, bring it to life in roles that are not so numbers driven. So I can only speak for my team and I don't want to make generalizations, but at Oyster, the channel sales team is all men and the support roles are all women. And that just happened to fall that way. There's been role switches, there's been dynamic shifts. So like, it's not as if it was meant to be that way, but it is. And in that, it's very easy to say, here are the impacts for channel sales. It's not so easy to do that for support roles like partner marketing and programs and ops. So, and even technology partnerships. So technology and automations to really help measure things like rev share that's coming in from partners, different touch points that are helping with engagement, the different actions that have to be taken with like onboarding a partner, all of those things that can go very unnoticed can then have some numbers and attraction behind it. So that's really where I've seen it made impacts in the roles that I have on my team.
While you recover your breath, I think my approach is slightly more abstract to what you guys say, so maybe we'll complement what you shared. And it comes from something my wife wrote way before ChatGPT, so bear in mind with that. but it always stuck with me, something she wrote an article about, leveraging AI for customer support, where she said empathy cannot be codified. And I think it stuck in my mind because I always try to automate or, find a tool to do everything and anything to save me time, because I know that the part, at least for now, the part of me that cannot be replaced is building meaningful relationships with my partners. And so anything that I can find to automate the hell out of my job, I'll do it so that I can actually spend time in building the communication through the empathy that up until today, we still cannot reproduce with an algorithm.
I love your sound bites, Elisa, always. And I'm just, as we're kind of talking about automation thing, it made me think back to something you said back in March when I talked to you, and we were talking about bias in data. I know this is
such a great memory.
It was a really good memory. It was a really good memory, but I'm just going to randomly bring this up now in terms of being a woman leader in partnerships. How can we help counter that bias in data? Because we know that data is everything. We know that's trending so hard right now. Everyone wants to anchor in data. Any marketer knows that there's value there. How do we do so in a way that is both revenue driving and equitable? It's a big question, I know. I know we didn't prepare for it. I think it's an important one to think about.
I think my mind is going in a very different direction. Yes, because when you thought about data first, the first thing that came to my mind when you mentioned the representation of women in data, we were referring, I think, at the time to Invisible Women, which is a book that reflects on the fact that the data nowadays available doesn't always account for women into the data sets, hence the results being mostly biased all of the time. And I was just going to say, well, PartnerStack, hello. Why don't you guys start doing some deep insights into partnerships and women? And I think this is a great platform. This is a great step you guys are taking. And so at least you can count with me if you ever want to run. Let's find out what is happening, what it would do. And I think looking into how many of us there are, what are the struggles we go through, is the type of data we might need to shed visibility into the topic and to take it further.
Sounds like a co-marketing initiative, but we'll pin that for later. But I think
no pressure.
I'm interested in.
Just to prove that we're really, really live, right?
Yeah, right? Spoiler alert, everyone. We've got some great questions coming in as well, and I don't want to miss some of the conversations. And I'm going to start with one that just came into the Q&A today. This one's fresh off the presses here. And it is, what are good examples of men in the workplace allying with you? Or how do you wish men allied with you? So I think we're speaking to male allyship here. Do we have any examples of I see Jeff, go. You got
listen, I have a partnership allyship example. It's a perfect example. So there's a huge EMS platform that we're partners with. They changed how their tiers worked and we got demoted a tier, and I was all up in arms about it because our MRR was huge, but it was the whole debacle, right? And around the exact same time that happened, we ended up getting a new partner manager, and he's young and fresh into this role. And our first call, he even I saw him a couple weeks ago in Toronto, and he just was like, our first call, you just yelled at me about how mad you were, but I promised you I'm going to fix all of these things. I'm going to make sure that you're happy with us and this program. And literally, since I think this was 8 months ago, every promise that he made to me, and I was angry, and I spoke to a lot of people at this company about how they mistreated us as an agency partner. And he followed up, and he made sure all the things that we lost or we should have gotten based on our commitment to this platform have been restored literally up until last week. When I saw him a couple weeks ago, he's like, Jess, there's one last thing I'm going to do that I promised I would do. And he literally did it earlier this week. put it in Slack. It's like, this was the last thing I promised, and here you go. And without him supporting me and my sometimes crazy rants, I'll say, but like, I was so disengaged from this program because of the changes that they had made. And he decided that he recognized me and my agency's importance, I guess, into the program and took this on, and we wouldn't have salvaged the relationship or put us back in the partnership tier that we should be in without him. And maybe I did sound like a crazy angry woman, right? Because there was a lot of men on that team, but he heard me, he took everything I said, and he made it happen. So shout out to Will. I'm not going to say the company name, but shout out to Will.
I love it. It's like, give us the name. Good job, Will. I will get Will over here. Great work, Will. Love to see it. Let's do more of that. Great examples, Will. Adrienne, do you have anything in your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not so much a man versus female thing in my mind, but I'd say the biggest way that anybody can advocate for you, especially if they're coming from more of a C-suite level, is just asking the questions, where does partnerships fit into this question or this initiative or this project or whatever it is? So like another Sam just started at our company. Actually, this one's going to be really obvious. He's our CRO, so pretty easy to look up. But Sam just started as our new CRO. He is amazing. He is wonderful. And the biggest thing that he's done to advocate for us is simply ask that question everywhere he can. Anytime he hears marketing talk about something, sales talk about something, where does partnerships fit into this? Because I think so often that's all it takes is that like, oh, right. Haven't thought about it that way, haven't read it in. So finding someone that can really advocate you, even from as simple as that, really makes a massive difference.
I love that. Elisa?
I don't know if I have an example of always within the partnership realm or the personal, maybe career one, but coming from in my youth, being a ballerina and just like being always surrounded by women teachers, it was always very hard for me to think like, oh, I'm going to have perhaps like a male boss that I'm going to look up. Like I don't have experience with that. And I think that I was pleasantly surprised by life the first time, like someone crossed my path and out of a demo offered me a job. I wasn't the one doing the demo. He was doing the demo to me. And it was the one person that believed in me like over and over again and gave me the freedom to explore, to fail, taught me to fail, which back in classical ballet was not something you were entitled to do. And that just like gave me the foundation to really feel comfortable stepping outside of my comfort zone. But it was very hard to trust, like a male figure to be this like mentor and ally and advocate of like, hey, like this is Elisa, she has a crazy idea, like let's do it. I was like, wait, what? You're like letting me do that? And I think like finding and allowing yourself to embrace those allies that will fight for you and open some doors that maybe you are not even ready to open yourself. It's not an easy task to do, but those are the allies and they are right behind the door.
I love that. I'm going to I like what Adrienne said earlier too, when she was talking about how it's not necessarily this male female thing. I'm going to get a little intersectional here. We're going to have an intersectional feminist moment. As a queer woman of color, I have been really, really privileged to have access to some strong male champions. Obviously, you'll see that I give oppressors a hard time. And sometimes they typically end up being men. So that's why the conversation sometimes steers there. But in general, I think that when it comes to allies in our lives, it depends on our identities as well, right? So I've been really grateful for both male and white women allies to help support things often overlooked that I've completed, I've done, or whatever. It's easy to like bucket. There's a ton of unconscious bias at play at all times. I say unconscious bias because I don't think it's intentional. But having those folks stand up in a room and being like, hey, that's what she said, right? Makes a big difference because it's the attribution of thought. It's the conversation starter. It also helps reinforce and validate the work and contributions that you're doing. So it's important to kind of know where we're drawing our power, understand where we sit in the power structure, and how we can advocate for all the folks that might be underrepresented. So, I mean, it's women leading partnerships, and women leaders, I find, are the ones that start moving the needle there and start advocating and start celebrating, highlighting the folks that are doing the work on the ground every day. So love to see that. A question that came in. So we had asked a bunch of registrants too, to kind of write in questions. We did get a bunch of them. I don't think we'll be able to go through all of them today, but I am going to ask one of these out. So again, this is going to be like a wild, wild west. Whoever has it, just hand up and go. But what's the best and most amicable way to dissolve a partnership? Also, what are some legal ramifications to look for? Not the most women leading partnerships question, but I think you folks with your expertise might have an answer here.
I can start from the agency side, but I feel like I have never fully dissolved a partnership unless the company itself has gotten rid of the partnership program. And I've actually seen it a couple times where like the leaders of the partnership, program at the company either got laid off and no one took it over. And so the program kind of disappeared. That's been like the most one that I've seen happen. And then no one told us, like, we were like, okay, does this, like, what do we even do here? So that's not been a great example, but I think at the end of the day, as long as there's been no like ill will or anyone being a jerk or anything, for us partnerships, once we create it, it exists. Whether or not we're always bringing you leads or using your platform, we have some softwares we haven't used for like 3 years, but you're still on our list that if something comes up, we're going to think of you, but it could be 3 years and you don't hear from us. So does that count as dissolving or just separating ways for a little bit? I think at the end of the day, as long as nothing bad has happened, you can just kind of, it's one of those friends that like you don't really see all the time, but then you text them and they're like, oh, hey, like it's as if nothing happened, right? So unless I don't know if there's an example of like a partnership having to be dissolved, but we've never really even thought about it. It's just we'll talk to you soon kind of thing.
Yeah. I think like the biggest thing for me in order to achieve what Jessica's saying there about like not really having to dissolve anything is having really early set, very clear value exchange to each other. Here's what my expectations are from the partnership and here are mine. That fair value exchange conversation is one that can like really easily just be skipped over because there's some assumptions made. It's like, I feel that I just want referrals from you, but you have to really explicitly say it. What do you want from us? We will give you this in return. What do you want from us? We'll give you this in return. So I think if you have that, the rest of the conversation becomes quite simple, whether it's like literally legally dotted into the contract or whether it's just a verbal agreement. That conversation can become a lot more amicable and just natural.
Yeah, and just to bounce off of that, that's one of the first things I say when I talk to a potential new partner is, what do you expect from us? Because the second thing I'll say, sorry, my calendar. The second thing I'll say is I only send your software to my clients when it makes sense. We are not a salesy focused agency. And if that doesn't vibe with you, then we're not going to be the right partner. But if you're cool with our organic nature of bringing you in when it makes sense, it's going to work out fine. And then that goes back to, you may not hear from us for a while, but when there's something there, there's something there, right? So I totally agree with that, Adrienne.
And we have another question that just came into the chat. It comes from Natalie Jordan, who's in the audience right now. And the question is, what does career growth look like for each of you? Elisa, do you want to kick us off?
I'm smiling because it's a topic I love, and I think I have a crazy take on career growth, so I'm gonna share.
I love it. I love it. Lifelong learner, you.
Meaning, for instance, when people ask me, like, you just joined a company, where do you see yourself in a few years in the company? I'm like, I don't know. I hope I'm gonna be doing something different. I really, really hope that only constant in my life is my wife and my daughter, and everything else can change all the time, career-wise. I wanted to be a ballerina. I kind of gave a hint before. Got my start in my career in customer support, was like super passionate about that for like the longest time. Got into marketing, then kind of like started to pave my way into partnerships, and I hope it takes me either to enjoy the ride for a few years or to change ways. And that's what career growth means to me. It doesn't necessarily to be a vertical move bottoms up and a hierarchical kind of like stepping stones towards, like become a C-level. It is fun. I've been there. But I think that, like growing to the right or to the left and exploring other roles and other career paths can be as challenging and as fun and as fulfilling as, like growing in the same role or side of the industry.
I love that and completely agree. I think for me, it's been like such a game changer to stop thinking about it as like, okay, manager, senior manager, director, blah, blah, blah. Like maybe, sure, if that's the direct trajectory you want to go in, that's wonderful. But that's how I've started to think about things as more in trajectories versus like this like hierarchical ladder, because I think it is really helpful to think 15 years ahead, 20 years ahead. I've seen a lot of like articles and stuff pop up recently being like, the job you want in 15 years doesn't even exist, so don't worry thinking about it. Well, like I get that sentiment. Yeah. For me, it's like, if you want to be a business owner, if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to be in direct sales, these are all different skill sets, and these are all different things that you should be learning. So it's like figuring out that trajectory, hard word, will really allow you to do that with a lot more ease without you like putting these weird, like I need to get promoted every 6 months on yourselves. It allows you to do those kind of like horizontal jungle gym moves that allow you to build your skill set versus just getting that promotion to the next level.
I don't know if this applies to me because it's my own company and I'm the boss. So like, where do I go?
You can still have growth, Jess.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always like in digital marketing, there's always something new. Like Facebook friggin' changes every day and there's iOS 17. Like everything is always changing on that front. I think for me, continuing to grow like the business, we just launched commerce fulfillment in January, which was a huge new service to offer. And I've been basically adding services that I've had to learn, right? I'm not going to offer a service that I don't know and then practice and get to understand before offering it to my clients. But I think the big thing is if I focus this on my team, the way I approach career growth for them is as long as they're continuing to get better and trying something new or growing and learning in some way, I support that. I literally say to my team, if you've been, I hate saying if you've been profitable because like they're human beings, but it is an agency. But like if you've driven profit and you're, doing this and doing that, I'm going to give you a raise. I'm going to give you a promotion. It's in your hands. What you want to do, you tell me. And as long as it's something that makes sense in the company, we're going to make it happen. So like we have a customer service team where we hire Canadian-based marketing grads. Like we don't outsource it because that's the source of our team is we grow them there and then they pick a stream. Do they like email? Do they like analytics? Do they like website development? And then we foster that and grow them into the marketing side. And then on the marketing side, what title do you want? As long as it's not president or CEO, and it's relevant, you can have it, right? So I think as a leader, I've really tried to make sure that if a team member sets their sights on something and it's something that we can support, realistically, I've never not said yes. So I think that from a leadership perspective, you should be supporting your team if you want to keep them and want them to get better.
And the other thing, and I'll just jump in, if you're a manager in the room, start advocating that people can be managers without managing people. Managing a program, managing a project, whatever it is, make those people a part of the leadership team, make those people a part of the discussion. I think it's awful when we don't let people into the locked room because they're not managing a person. As soon as they have one person underneath them, that they're now considered leadership. It just doesn't make sense to me. Strategy is leadership as well. So please.
I have some hot takes on this language between management and leadership, but we'll take it offline and I'll share it with you one day, Adrienne. I am so engaged and I'm loving this. We have time for probably one more question, and we have so many questions. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm stuck with which one would the audience would find more value. So I'm gonna actually try a thing where I'm gonna get everyone in the audience to vote which question. So for question 1, if you like this question more and you want to hear the answer from the panelists, you're going to send a heart emoji. And if with the reaction at the bottom, or if you want the second question, you're going to send the party emoji. So like the celebrate emoji. Ready for it? And you folks can participate too. So the question 1 is, how do you make time for self-care? I just like this as a leader, like, you know, you're a whole person. That's question 1. Question 2 is, how do you get more women to the table of tech projects? What can senior managers and C-suite do better to ensure that more women are leading projects?
What was the first emoji?
Self-care. The heart.
A heart.
Oh, this looks pretty evenly split. This didn't pan out the way I thought it was going to. Okay, someone vote in the chat, quick. This wasn't a proper poll. The heart. Self-care. That's just the one that came up. And that was tight. I saw both emojis flying off screen. So the question is, and let's wrap this up after this one, it's how do you make time for self-care? Each of you, I'm going to start with you this time, Adrienne.
Self-care. I voted for this one. I want to hear the other panelists' answers. I have none. I have a toddler. I don't have time for self-care. I'm sick 50% of my life now because of this kid. So just be super diligent about your working hours. Like, listen, we're not in a hospital here. There are not lives on the table. Care 10% less. Like I said before, sign off when you want to sign off, turn your notifications off. You can answer it tomorrow. You can. So I think I'm telling myself this as I speak it, but that's my true belief.
That's so honest. It's so truthful. I'm going to pass this over to Elisa, and then we're going to end with you, Jess.
Hold on. It will pass, Adrienne. I've got an almost teenager, and it's amazing. You're going to love it. It's amazing. But it is hard, and like if you are also like a very social person, it becomes even harder. I do like a bunch of things because I'm a mess when it comes to balance, and then I get sick all the time as well. So I have absolutely no notifications on my phone ever, on nothing, anything, nothing. I delete Slack from my phone every Friday evening, and I install it again on Monday's morning. Otherwise, even though I have no notifications, because my muscles go like, oh my God, let me check what's happening, even if nothing's happening. I also, thanks to my therapist, have learned to take 2 weeks in a row holidays and just go and sit and eat fish and lay on the beach and do absolutely nothing. And it has changed the way I divide my year in H1, H2. It really recharges me, and it wasn't easy. I have lots of anxiety. I take just like more time preparing my handover, really document the hell out of everything that I did, and then I want anyone else to take care of when I'm gone, and then just come back and assume that everything is going to be taken care, which typically is. So I think like boundaries and like finding hacks. Like if killing your phone for the weekend works, then do that. And then going back to, depending on what you do, which I'm assuming we're not working here with like laptop situations, it can wait until tomorrow. And most of the time, it is also about not overworking, to prove ourselves, to like prove our value, and also working smarter. It doesn't mean the amount of hours you put into things, it's going to amount to more results. Kind of like what Adrienne was saying before, it's just about the results you do. And if you play it smartly, you don't need lots of time. Automate everything you can so you get time to take a walk, do meetings walking. If you don't need to be in front of your camera, just like talk on your one-on-ones, watching the city go by through you. But yeah, that's kind of a few hacks from my side.
That was holistical, and I'm here for it. And I know we're over time, but I'm going to get Jess go ahead, your last one quick.
Okay. I mean, you guys talk about getting sick. I'm chronically sick, so I actually have to be really careful about my stress levels. I find working out every morning is a great way to like set myself up for the day. If I don't work out in the morning, I feel weird the whole rest of the day. But I also agree with the not always checking Slack. Like I had to train myself to do this too. Like I'm the boss and all these people's salaries are on the line. But I made sure that I trained my team to handle situations if I wasn't around, or I tell people sign off, it's Friday, deal with it on Monday. And when something crazy does happen over the weekend, like I was just in Atlanta and there was a huge situation that happened, I'm handling it over dinner with my husband. But that's a one very rare thing that happens, so that I'm there and focused when it happens. I'm not always checking. It's just my team and I can handle the big things when they come up. But the rest of the time, it's enjoy your time off and relax and get ready back for the Monday to Friday grind. And also, I like to play Nintendo Switch on the couch and just zone out of everything.
Same.
Yes.
I'll have to continue that conversation. Yeah. But thank you folks so much for coming today and honestly providing these helpful conversations and insights. I hope everyone got some value out of this. And Jess, the real MVP here was your computer. We're probably at 3%, but
I didn't plug it in, but we made it. We made it.
Thank you so much, folks. Sid. I'm not sure.
How do we go backstage?
How do we